I'm drinking my coffee from the same mug I've used for 20 years. It has a small chip on the rim. I could throw it away and get a new one, but I don't. It's just a mug. It works fine. That's how I've always been about things. I don't need much. Never have. The coffee is instant. I used to make it in a pot, but that seemed like too much trouble for just one person. My daughter bought me one of those fancy coffee makers a few Christmases ago. The kind with the little pods. I used it a few times, but then I went back to instant. It's simpler. I'm sitting at my kitchen table looking out at the backyard. The grass needs mowing, but I can't do it myself anymore. My son said he'd come by and do it, but that was 3 weeks ago. I'm not upset about it. He's busy. I understand that. I've never been the type to make demands. Never wanted to be a burden. I told myself that when the kids were growing up, and I still tell myself that now. The house is quiet. It's always quiet now. My husband Frank passed 11 years ago. Stroke. He was fixing something in a garage one Saturday, and he just went down. I found him an hour later. By then it was too late. The doctors said he was probably gone before he hit the floor. That's supposed to be comforting, I guess. He didn't suffer. But I suffered. I'm still suffering in a way. Not the sharp pain of loss anymore. That dulled over time. Now it's just this low constant ache. This awareness that I'm alone. That the life I built is over, and what's left is just me in this house with my chipped mug, and my instant coffee, and my overgrown lawn. The kids used to come around more after Frank died. For the first year or so they checked in regularly. Called every few days. Stopped by on weekends. But gradually that changed. The calls got less frequent. The visits spread further apart. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that mother. The one who complains. The one who makes her children feel guilty. I figured they had their own lives. Their own families. Their own problems. And they did. They do. I just didn't realize how completely those lives would eventually exclude me. Frank and I got married in 1964. I was 19. He was 21. We'd known each other since high school. He worked at his father's hardware store. I worked as a secretary at the insurance company downtown. We saved up for 2 years and then got married in a small ceremony at the church. My mother made the cake. His father gave us $500 as a wedding present. We used it as a down payment on a small house on Oak Street. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with yellow linoleum that was already old when we moved in, but it was ours. We were proud of it. Our first child came a year later. Stephen. He was a good baby. Quiet. Easy. I quit my job to stay home with him. That was expected. Frank worked at the hardware store 6 days a week. I took care of Stephen and the house. 2 years later, our daughter Amy came. Then 3 years after that, our youngest, Brian. 3 kids in 6 years. The house got crowded. Money got tight. But we managed. Frank worked hard. I stretched every dollar. We didn't take vacations. We didn't eat out. We didn't buy things we didn't need. But the kids never went without. They had clothes. They had food. They had a roof over their heads. That seemed like enough. I never asked for much from Frank either. He wasn't affectionate. Didn't talk about his feelings. Didn't tell me he loved me very often. But he went to work every day. He fixed things around the house. He didn't drink or gamble or run around. That counted for something. Most nights he'd come home tired. We'd eat dinner. He'd read the paper. Watch some TV. Go to bed. On Sundays we'd go to church as a family, and then come home, and I'd make a big lunch. That was our routine. Week after week. Year after year. It wasn't exciting, but it was stable. I thought that was what mattered. Stability. Consistency. Showing up every day, and doing what needed to be done. The kids grew up the way kids do. Stephen was serious. Always had his nose in a book. Did well in school. Didn't cause trouble. Amy was more social. Always had friends over. Always involved in something. Drama club or choir or volunteering. Brian was the baby. Spoiled a little maybe. He had a temper when he was young. Would throw fits if he didn't get his way. But he grew out of it mostly. They were good kids. I was proud of them. I didn't tell them that very often. We weren't a family that talked much about feelings. But I loved them. I showed it by taking care of them. by making their meals and washing their clothes and keeping the house clean, by being there when they came home from school, by sitting up with them when they were sick. That was how you showed love in our family, through actions, not words. Stephen went to college on a scholarship, studied engineering, met a girl there, and married her right after graduation. They moved 2 states away for his job. Amy went to community college, became a dental hygienist, married a man who worked in construction. They stayed local, had 2 kids. Brian didn't go to college, worked a series of jobs, retail, warehouse work, delivery driving. He moved out when he was 23, got an apartment with some friends, eventually settled down with a woman named Cheryl. They never married, but they've been together for years now. When the kids left home, Frank and I were alone together for the first time in decades. I thought maybe we'd get closer, maybe talk more, but we didn't. We just had less to talk about. The kids had been our main topic of conversation. Without them, there wasn't much left. Frank would ask what I did that day, and I'd say cleaned the house or went to the grocery store. He'd nod. That would be it. I'd ask about his day, and he'd say it was fine. Work was work. That was the extent of most of our conversations. Sometimes I'd wonder if he was happy, if I was happy, but I didn't dwell on it. This was life. This was marriage. You did your duty. You kept going. That's what people did. The grandkids came. Amy had her 2 girls. I was excited about that. Thought I'd be an involved grandmother, help out with babysitting, see them all the time. And at first I did. Amy would drop them off once or twice a week. I'd watch them for a few hours, make them lunch, play games with them. But as they got older, Amy needed me less. They were in school. They had activities. They had playdates with other kids. The visits got less frequent. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to impose. Amy's husband's mother lived closer to them. It made sense that they'd spend more time with her. I understood that. I did. But it still hurt a little. Watching from the outside, seeing pictures of family gatherings I wasn't invited to, hearing about birthday parties after they'd already happened. Stephen had kids too, 2 boys, but he lived far away. We saw them maybe once a year, usually at Christmas. They'd fly in and stay for a few days. The boys were polite but distant. They didn't know me very well. I was just a grandmother they saw once a year, the one who sent cards with money in them on their birthdays. I'd try to talk to them, but they'd give short answers. They were more interested in their phones and video games. I'd look at Stephen and see a stranger. My son had become someone I didn't really know. He'd talk about his job and his house and his life in another state, and it all felt so far removed from anything I understood. I'd nod and smile and feel this distance growing wider, but I didn't say anything. What was there to say? I'm your mother, and I barely know you anymore. That seemed pathetic. So I kept quiet. Brian came around occasionally, usually when he needed something. Money for rent, help with a car repair. Once he needed me to co-sign a loan. Frank had been alive then, and he'd said no. Said Brian needed to learn to stand on his own feet. Brian got angry. Stopped talking to us for 6 months. Eventually he came back around, but things were different after that. More formal, more distant. He'd call on my birthday and on Mother's Day. Sometimes he'd stop by for an hour on a Sunday, but it always felt obligatory, like he was checking a box. Visiting Mom. Done. Now he could go back to his real life. When Frank died, I thought things might change. I thought maybe the kids would realize I was alone now, that I might need them more. And like I said, they did step up at first, but it didn't last. Stephen flew in for the funeral, stayed 3 days, then went back to his life. Amy helped me sort through Frank's things, took time off work to make sure I was okay. But after a few weeks, she went back to her normal routine. Brian came by a few times, mowed the lawn once or twice. Then he stopped. I didn't ask him to come. Didn't want to nag. Figured he'd come when he could, when he thought about it. But apparently he doesn't think about it much. The first year was hard. I'd wake up and forget Frank was gone. I'd start to call out to him. Then I'd remember. The house felt empty in a way it never had before. Even when the kids were gone and it was just me and Frank, there had been someone else there. Someone to cook for. Someone to talk to even if the conversations were short. Now there was no one. I'd make myself breakfast and eat it alone. I'd watch TV alone. I'd go to bed alone. The silence was heavy, oppressive. I tried to fill it with the TV or the radio, but that just made it worse somehow. Made me more aware of how alone I actually was. I started going to the senior center once a week. They had activities, card games and bingo and craft projects. I'd sit with the other women and we'd work on whatever the activity was and make small talk. But I never made real friends there. Everyone was nice enough, but surface level. We'd talk about the weather or complain about our aches and pains. But we didn't really connect. I'd come home feeling more lonely than before I left. At least at home, I could pretend someone might call. Someone might stop by. At the senior center, it was obvious. We were all just old people with time to kill. Waiting. I started calling the kids more. Just to hear their voices. To feel connected to someone. Stephen almost never answered. He'd text later saying he was in a meeting or busy with the kids. He'd say he'd call back. Sometimes he did. Usually he didn't. Amy answered more often, but our conversations were short. She'd tell me about the girls. About work. About something that needed fixing in her house. I'd listen and try to contribute, but I never had much to say. My life was small. Routine. Nothing interesting ever happened. I felt boring even to myself. Brian rarely answered. When he did, he sounded distracted, like he was doing something else while talking to me. I'd ask how he was, and he'd say fine. I'd ask about Cheryl, and he'd say she was fine too. Then there'd be this long pause, and I'd know he wanted to get off the phone. So I'd make an excuse. Say I had something on the stove, or someone at the door. Let him off the hook. Better to end it myself, than to hear him say he had to go. Last year I fell. Nothing dramatic. I just lost my balance getting out of the shower, and went down hard. Bruised my hip badly. Maybe cracked a rib. I didn't go to the doctor. Couldn't afford it. I just stayed in bed for a few days, waiting for the pain to ease. I didn't call the kids. Didn't want to worry them. Didn't want to be a burden. But lying there alone in that house, I kept thinking, what if it had been worse? What if I'd hit my head? What if I couldn't get up? How long would it have been before someone found me? Amy usually called on Sundays, but if I didn't answer, would she come check on me? Probably not. She'd probably just figure I was out. Or at the senior center. Or maybe she wouldn't even notice if I didn't answer. Maybe a week would go by. Maybe two. Maybe I'd die in this house alone, and no one would know until the smell got bad enough for a neighbor to complain. That thought terrified me. Not the dying part. I've made my peace with death. Frank's been gone 11 years. My parents are gone. Most of my friends from when I was younger are gone. I'm 76 years old. I've lived a long life. I'm not afraid of it ending. What terrifies me is the aloneness of it. The fact that I could disappear, and it might take days or weeks for anyone to notice. The fact that I spent my whole life taking care of people, and now there's no one taking care of me. No one checking on me. No one who would miss me if I was gone. I've been thinking a lot about what I did wrong, where things went sideways. And the truth is I don't think I did anything wrong. I was a good mother. I took care of my kids. Made sure they had what they needed. Didn't ask for much in return. I thought that was the right way to do it. Didn't want to be demanding. Didn't want to be needy. Didn't want them to feel obligated or guilty. I wanted them to come around because they wanted to, not because they had to. But maybe that was the mistake. Maybe by not asking for anything I made it too easy for them to forget about me. Maybe I should have been more demanding. Should have insisted on regular visits. Should have made myself more of a presence in their lives. Should have asked for help when I needed it, instead of always saying I was fine. But that's not who I am. I was raised to be self-sufficient. To not impose. To not be a burden. My own mother was like that. Lived alone for 15 years after my father died. Never complained. Never asked for help. Died quietly in her sleep one night, and we didn't find her for 3 days. I remember thinking at the time that it was sad, that she'd been alone at the end. But I also admired her independence, her strength, her refusal to be needy. Now I'm becoming her. Now I'm the old woman living alone in a house that's too big. Waiting for phone calls that don't come often enough, hoping for visits that rarely happen, trying not to impose on my children's lives. And I wonder if my mother felt the way I feel now. If she was lonely. If she wished we'd called more, visited more. If she died wishing she'd asked for more instead of always saying she was fine. The thing is, I still love my kids. I'm not angry at them. I understand they're busy. They have jobs and families and obligations. I had the same things when they were young. I didn't visit my mother as often as I should have. I didn't call as often as I could have. I told myself she was fine. She never complained. She never asked for anything. So I assumed she didn't need anything. And maybe my kids are doing the same thing with me. Maybe they assume I'm fine because I never complain. Never ask for anything. Never tell them I'm lonely. Never tell them I need them. But I do need them. Not for anything specific. I'm not sick. I can still take care of myself mostly. I don't need them to do things for me. I just need them to see me. To remember I exist. To call once in a while just to talk. To visit not because it's a holiday or my birthday, but just because. To include me in their lives instead of keeping me at arm's length. But I don't know how to ask for that. Don't know how to say I'm lonely without sounding pathetic. Don't know how to tell them I need more without making them feel guilty. So I stay quiet. I say I'm fine when they ask. I tell them not to worry about me. I make it easy for them to forget about me. And then I sit here alone wondering why they do. Maybe this is just how it goes. Maybe every parent ends up here eventually, on the outside of their children's lives, waiting for scraps of attention, trying not to be a burden. I look at other people at the senior center, and I see the same thing. Old women mostly, sitting alone, playing bingo, making small talk, going home to empty houses, waiting for phone calls from children who are too busy to call. It's an epidemic of loneliness among old people. But no one talks about it. We all pretend we're fine. We all say our kids are wonderful and visit all the time even when they don't. We protect them even now. Even when we're the ones who need protecting. Last month was Mother's Day. Amy came by with her girls. They stayed for about an hour. The girls gave me cards they'd made at school. Amy gave me flowers. We sat in the living room and made awkward conversation. The girls kept looking at their phones. Amy kept checking the time. I asked if they wanted to stay for lunch, but Amy said they had plans with her husband's mother. They left. I put the flowers in a vase. Read the cards. Then I sat in the quiet house and cried. Not because they didn't stay, but because I knew they didn't want to. Because I could feel how much of an obligation I'd become. How visiting me was something they had to do, not something they wanted to do. That hurt more than being alone, being seen as a chore, as a box to check off, as something to get through so they could move on to the more important parts of their day. Stephen called that evening. About 30 seconds into the conversation, I could tell he was driving. He said Happy Mother's Day. Asked how I was. I said fine. He said that was good. There was a long silence. Then he said he had to go. He was almost home. I said okay. We hung up. The whole call lasted maybe 2 minutes. I thought about calling him back. About saying I'm not fine. I'm lonely. I miss you. I need you to be more present in my life. But I didn't. What would be the point? He'd feel guilty. Maybe visit more for a little while. But eventually things would go back to how they are now. Because this is who we are. This is who I made us by never asking for more. Brian didn't call until 3 days later. He said he forgot. Said he'd been busy with work. I said it was okay. Don't worry about it. He said he'd come by soon and mow the lawn. That was 6 weeks ago. The lawn is still long. I thought about calling and reminding him, but I didn't. I don't want to nag. Don't want to be that mother. The one who's always calling. Always wanting something. Always making demands. Better to just let it go. Let the lawn grow. Eventually I'll pay someone to cut it. It's fine. Everything's fine. Except it's not fine. I'm not fine. I'm lonely and tired, and I don't know how many good years I have left. Could be 10. Could be 5. Could be 1. And I don't want to spend whatever time I have left sitting alone in this house, waiting for phone calls and visits that rarely come. But I also don't know how to change it. Don't know how to bridge the distance that's grown between me and my kids. Don't know if it's even possible at this point. Maybe too much time has passed. Maybe we've drifted too far apart. Maybe this is just how it ends, with me alone and them busy with their lives, and neither of us knowing how to reach across the gap. I finished my coffee. It's cold now. I should have drunk it while it was hot, but I got lost in thought. I do that a lot these days. Sit and think and lose track of time. I rinse out the mug and set it on the counter. Look out the window at the long grass in the backyard. Think about calling Brian, but I won't. I never ask for much for my children. Never have. And I suppose at this point there's no sense starting now.